The pandemic has taken surveillance of workers to the next level. We are being observed while we work more than ever, even though people working from home has achieved more efficacy and better results. Is the pandemic being used as a tool to create a surveillance state?
As many people are working from home during the coronavirus pandemic, some employers are turning to software to monitor what their employees are doing all day long. The technology does things like take screen grabs or monitor how long they're active on their computer.
I wouldn't like it taking screen grabs of me while I'm sort of sitting working. I do some pretty unusual faces when I'm on my own. Or maybe sometimes I'll do this noise. That's why I never thought I would ever go on anything like a sort of a celebrity show or a Big Brother type show, because I think over a 24-hour period, I do at least 3 quite strange things.
Software companies say it allows employers to see how productive their employees have been. So Nick, explain exactly how this technology works.
The basic idea is that your employer has access to understanding what you do on your computer. It can be through your webcam. There's some systems that allow the employer to watch you at any moment.
A lot of people put a little plaster over their thing, don't they, anyway, now these days? Like after Edward Snowden made it plain that we were being surveyed in a way that we would never have anticipated, and that quite often significant events such as, of course, famously 9/11 and now the pandemic are used to increase surveillance because of the fundamental uneasiness of the relationship between government and those that are governed. That it's an uneasy contract. I feel bad enough when my own phone tells me about me, Russell spent 5 hours, like, I think, how can I have been on this phone for 5 hours? No, some of it's a meditation app. No, some of it, that was a long phone calls to people that I'm doing worthwhile things with. You know, like I try and justify it to me. I'm surveilling myself. We have gone beyond Foucault's rumination on Jeremy Bentham's panopticon. The panopticon is a philosophical device that posits what if there was a prison where the prisoner could be observed at all times from a perfectly positioned tower. That would mean that in the end, people would consider that they were continually being observed and would behave accordingly. This idea of private space, the idea of just being who you are when you're not observed. Now, of course, much of who we are is in relationship, but we get to, usually, hopefully choose these relationships, have benign, nourishing, kind relationships, not relationships where we're regarded as a kind of utility, just as a unit of labour. If I feel anxious when I'm surveilling myself, I certainly don't want to be surveilled by anyone else.
And there's some that constantly photograph your screen, like every 5 seconds, and can almost create a rolling video of what you're doing at every point. So they can see every single thing you type in, and at the end of the day, your boss or somebody in the human resources department can see all the things you type.
Isn't it extraordinary now that there's this, the famous digital footprint that if you're a kid now growing up, everything is logged, your mad teens, your daft tween years, all logged and recorded. And now even on the privacy of your own laptop.
There obviously has been a huge upsurge in the use of this software while everybody's gone to work at home. And some of that will stay even when we return to work. We're going to have a whole different kind of surveillance added on top of the work from home surveillance that we've gotten in the last couple months.
We're going to be surveyed every second of the day. I suppose what's terrifying mostly about it is a sort of common theme in literature and philosophy, the kind of mechanization of the human being, the Clockwork Orange idea, the idea that we're being modified continually through our behavior because of things like social dilemma. We are aware how we are manipulated through tech companies and social media platforms. Now add to that a layer of surveillance. Human consciousness itself, your very awareness, your beingness itself is colonized. It's being colonized already, I suppose, through means of propaganda and social control and forms of socialization that are regarded as ordinary, and some which are probably necessary for sort of social animals like us and animals that live in sort of dense and populated areas. But the fact is now that when are you actually going to be free? No wonder you get people doing weird stuff, odd fetishes, dressing up, doing some weird thing in some lurking place of quiet, murky privacy, just to feel free again, just to feel that you are who you are. Your very humanity, your freedom, your animal energies, your libido, your unconscious, all being monitored, refined, mined, and tethered to the intentions and objectives of an other that may not necessarily be in your best interests.
We increasingly find that employees are willing to forego some of their privacy in exchange for jobs, particularly in the current economy.
I suppose that's the other thing, isn't it? Yeah, as desperation increases, the ability for people in positions of power to impose more draconian conditions increases.
Many companies that existed pre-pandemic have already developed software to track employees in a variety of ways.
Kyle with Hubstaff here. By reviewing the activity measurements for this person here, you can get a good sense of what they're doing and how productive they are. And the URL view gives you a look at the websites they're visiting, and it'll show you how long they've been visiting them.
It reminds me of something Adam Curtis said once, that we have become kind of technocratic managers of ourselves. You know, we put things on our wrists to monitor our heart rate, how well we're sleeping. Our job has become not to live life, but to sort of monitor almost retrospectively the experience of our life according to a set of criteria based sort of on a kind of a personal bureaucracy.
We take a number of data points, be it a CRM tool that they're currently using, a phone system like a Vonage, an email system. We aggregate all those data points in a real-time proprietary dashboard.
For me, one of the things where I became aware of language, like data points, etc., is around like football. Like, you know, we know this person's completed this many passes, runs this distance during a match, made this many tackles. And I thought, God, it's amazing how data can be used to understand something that used to seem somewhat instinctual or ethereal, like knowing whether or not a footballer was good. But now it's because the data is so accessible and so effective, anybody can be reduced to a set of data points. I suppose what that does, if you have any sort of romanticism left in you, is it extracts this idea of us having a mystery at our essence. Also, the idea of freedom. Don't you feel now, more than at any point in history, that we are creeping towards dystopia? There are some people that believe, don't they, that some of the fictional content that's put out is in some way preparatory, like that we're watching things so we go, oh yeah, that's no problem, I remember that in Minority Report, there's no problem, they're just inserting a chip into my finger, oh it's no problem, just having a Neuralink put in my brain, oh it's no problem, I'm just a battery now like in the Matrix.
We record and transcribe all your phone calls. All of it is recorded. We use AI tools to massage that into a real-time score that you see, as does your boss and the CEO and the VP of sales and the chief revenue officer. Everyone is seeing the productivity.
Black Mirror is going to look like Last of the Summer Wine in a couple of years. We'll look back fondly on the work of Charlie Brooker as a kind of nostalgic, whimsical constable's Hay-Wain portrait of a long-lost pastoral Britain.
Another company working in the same space is Transparent Business, which uploads a stream of desktop screenshots to your manager when you are clocked in. Transparent Business says that this type of system is both easier for the worker and ultimately results in them having more privacy.
We're transparent business. We're just completely transparent. Everything you do is transparent. Your underwear is now mandatorily transparent.
Every morning you come to your desk, you have an email from us. You have your productivity score, your proto scores on the first line of the email. Your score yesterday for proto score was 74. Your colleagues were 90. They've done more.
Some additional information is companies including Protoscore, we saw them, Hubstaff, Interguard, Time Doctor, TerraMind, oh my god, VeryClock, Transparent Business, as well as Sneak have reported their users rapidly expand. So people are using this more and more. Sneak keeps productivity high with tools such as Wall of Faces, which stays on throughout the workday and features constantly updating photos of workers taken through their laptop camera every 1 to 5 minutes.
Sneak takes your photo at a regular interval. You can control how often your photo's taken by selecting between 1 minute or 5 minute intervals.
Sneak's co-founder Del Curry says his software is meant to build a connected office dynamic and was never designed to spy on anyone. Sneak! We at Sneak deny the implication that we could ever be sneaky or sneaking around. What's given you the idea that we're interested in sneaking? As well as employee monitoring software, last month it emerged that Microsoft 365 allows managers to measure their staff to the extent of knowing who they are communicating with. And earlier this year, Zoom was criticised for a range of privacy issues, including sending user data to Facebook, wrongly claiming the app had end-to-end encryption, and allowing meeting hosts to track attendees. In many call centres, information is collected on everything from the length of calls and the number of call transfers to the time people spend on their toilet breaks. Sean, you were gone for 15 minutes then. I've got hemorrhoids. I know you have, Sean. We've been looking at them through your transparent pants.
Currently, employers are allowed to secretly monitor employees, as no federal law exists that requires them to inform their workers about surveillance.
Fact is, we're not meant to be working all the time. Whether it's from a socialist perspective or a capitalist perspective, the assumption is made that human beings are here to work and that the earth is a resource. Neither of these things are true. They are both constructions. Human beings are here to live, to experience joy and love. And in order to facilitate that, some work does have to be done. But we could have a mentality of our priority is the preservation of the planet and loving, compassionate, nurturing relationships with one another. If we live in a culture that emphasizes and amplifies selfishness and cruelty, continually prodding, jabbing, jolting those lower impulses, how are we to gain access to these realms? Doesn't matter. We'll be watching you all the time. If we see anything other than efficiency at the laptop, we will administer a small electric shock.
It's now a free-for-all. It's a wild, wild west. Everybody is now subject to the same kind of minute monitoring as we previously thought was the plight of those poor factory or warehouse workers.
Well, I think we've demonstrated that there are other motives at play. The motivation being, of course, that if you observe and control workers, you can continue to create conditions where workers are competing against one another, where the wages can become lower and lower and working conditions can become harder and harder. And we will be forever distracted from the fact that we're not even here to work, that work ought be the bare minimum in order to facilitate joy and life and love. Those things oughtn't be diminished to facilitate more work. I learned that from just watching my workers and surveilling them.